Congress. How I am happy to join like this wonderful Congress. Thank you very much, all persons who worked like in program, like this program. In this study, I focused on effects of dreams, persons who breathed by suicide. Firstly, I have summary suicide and dreams scientific background. In this study, I used Durkheim's suicide theory, Goffman stigmatized theory, Jung and Freud dreams theory. As you know, there is a reciprocity relationship between suicide and social exclusion, stigmatized. I mean that survivors of suicide are supposed to social exclusion and stigmatized by the society. On the other hand, the persons who are supposed to social exclusion and stigmatized by the society oriented to suicide. There is a reciprocity relationship between them. On the other hand, there is the same relationship, reciprocity relationship, dreams and culture. According to Jung and Freud, dreams influence culture and culture influence dreams. In this study, my main aim to compare the dream experiences of persons bereaved by suicide. Dear colleagues, I focused on survivors of suicide, two different studies, and I observed that survivors of suicide exposed to social exclusion and stigmatized by the society, because suicide is a dangerous concept. It wasn't accepted by the religious and cultures through historical process. For this reason, survivors of suicide were very worried about their relative suicide. In this study, I studied two different participants, and their statements coding content analyze. I use content analyze method and in-depth interviewing. One of my participants, who was a mother, this mother was 51 years old, a teacher, and her daughter, who was 19 years old, a university student, and had psychiatric treatment for 6 years, committed suicide and died. One woman participant, was a Muslim, but she didn't accept Islamic religion's rules and interpreting about suicide. She said to me, I believe in God, I am a Muslim, but I don't believe the Islamic religion's rules of interpreting about suicide. According to me, God doesn't mind suicide. Suicide belongs to this world, not the second world. Their psychological and thoughtful area is very important for this study. The other participant was a man. This man was a teacher, 47 years old, and his son, 16 years old, committed suicide and died. This participant was a decree victim, and was in the prison when his son committed suicide. At the moment, you must ask me, what is Dekrilaus and Dekrilaus victim? Dear participants, 15 July 2016 in Turkey, a coup attempt occurred, and after that, 100,000 persons were dismissed from their job. This situation caused social exclusion and unemployment. For this reason, but on the other hand, thousand persons were arrested and put in the prison. In this situation, these persons were supposed to social exclusion and stigmatized, and most of them, we know that 40 persons committed suicide and died. One of them, my participants' sons. For this reason, this knowledge is very important for our research. Dekrilaus victims experienced be social exclusion and stigmatized. Anyway, these participants mentioned to me in that interviewing their dreams. In this study, I compare my two participants' dreams because, according to Jung and Freud, dreams influenced person's daily life and shape their societal perceptions. We will observe shaping societal perceptions. How shaping? Yes. My woman participant said to me, I was very sorry. I was very sorry because of my daughter's suicide. I saw dream. Until I saw dream. I saw dream my daughter. We hugged each other. We forgave each other. And after this dream, I was in peace. I was better than the past because I forgive my daughter. My daughter forgive me. In these dreams, as said Jung and Freud, these participants' subconscious appear because psychological situations was anger, deep guilty, and suffer. After these dreams, my participants was in the peace anymore. On the other hand, the other participants' experiences was like that. My men participants, members of social environment, saw different dreams. Members of social environments saw two different dreams and told the father. They told him, oh my God, I saw your son in my dream, in our dream. He was white clothing and angelic figures, dear colleagues, metaphysical figures. These dreams full of metaphysical figures. For example, one of them, she said to him, I saw Fatima, Prophet Muhammad, Prophet. Islamic religion is very important figure, woman figure. I saw Fatima in my dream and your son with her. as you remember, my man participant was a Muslim man and believed all of religious rules and interpreting about suicide. For this reason, after these dreams was better than the past. He said to me, Dr. Zehra, I am better than the past because God sent to me messages. Don't worry, your son in the paradise. Yes, actually, as you can see, dreams influenced person's life and societal perception. In general perception, survivors of suicide, although survivors of suicide supposed to by the society KHK persons, that is Dekri loves victims environment, didn't think like that because they believed that these persons were innocent, but although they were innocent persons, they were supposed to stigmatize and social exclusion by the Turkish state. For this reason, persons who committed suicide were innocent and were forgiven by the God. Their thoughtful perception was like that. That is to evaluation about survivors of suicide in this examples changed. Finally, we can say that dreams function as a personal meaning-making process that helps alleviate the psychological burden of traumatic experiences. Intense emotions such as guilt and anger are reframed through dreams, enabling individuals to move forward with their lives. Religious symbols and values provide a metaphysical framework for reinterpreting trauma, particularly among families affected by the decree laws, helping reduce feeling of stigmatization and strengthening coping mechanism against social exclusion. We can say, finally, conclusion, the meaning attributed to dreams by relatives of suicide victims has profound individual and societal impacts. Dreams have functioned as powerful tools that facilitate the grieving process, alleviate emotional burdens, and provide comfort through metaphysical interpretations. The religious imagery in dreams has been particularly effective in helping individuals make sense of the religious and societal questions triggered by suicide. I think we must to say some policies recommendation, organizing psychosocial support services, organizing spiritual counseling programs, organizing societal awareness campaigns for negative effects of stigma. The end of my presentation, I must to say that the most important limited for me as an academic to be dismissing from my university. I was dismissed from my university 2016, and for 9 years I fought to have my right in my country. For this reason, as you can understand, this psychological situation was very, very extremely difficult for me. For this reason, I had to psychological treatment this studying process because I have to be objective. Thank you very much for listening.
We'll be talking about how to track student wellbeing risks without triggering student risks. How to track student wellbeing without triggering student risks. Let me just go to presenter view so that we can move on. Thank you. So this is based on a publication that we made in 2024 in the following journal. You can follow up the link there to understand the instrument that I'm going to be talking about. I want to tell you the story of how we developed the instrument and how we're using it in the context of schools to support young people. Just briefly about the organization that developed the instrument. The company is called Steer Tracking. It's a UK commercial company. Steer was founded 10 years ago, so we've been working in this space for quite some time in young people's mental health in schools, and we work with over 300 schools and quite a number, over 300,000 students in an 8 to 18-year-old program. We support schools in helping them identify well-being risks in their young people earlier before they become acute, and ultimately this is designed to reduce the pressure on critical mental health services by helping to provide low-level support at a school level, and it's particularly around providing targeted, personalized support around individual students to help them develop social emotional self-regulation. So Steer really has kind of focused itself on trying to overcome, I think, what is a central problem for all societies, really, which is around how you support and track young people's well-being in schools. And this is the problem. Asking students direct survey questions about their well-being increases their well-being risks. Asking them direct survey questions about their well-being increases their well-being risks. There's a recent publication, I've linked it here, and the PowerPoint will be shared afterwards. You can follow up on the links of the results of a 6-year study here in the UK that evaluated a very large study involving £6 million, and evaluated over that period of time a number of programs that sought to track and improve well-being in schools by asking and training students on particular well-being risks to reduce them. And that the really surprising outcome of the study that no one was really expecting was that those programs and addressing those questions directly and surveying those students directly had at best ambivalent results and at worst negative impacts on those young people. And this was around priming and sensitization, that if you ask students and young people about explicit well-being risks, you actually prime and sensitize them to experience those risks. So doing so by its very nature creates the problem you're setting out to reduce. And I mean that's the overall basic challenge and problem facing any kind of school-based wellbeing tracking program, is that asking those wellbeing questions directly actually increases the problem you're trying to address. So how do you tackle that? Well, Steer started to work on a solution over 10 years ago. And instead of measuring explicit well-being risks of students, we sought to identify the cognitive precursors that would lead to future well-being risks. And we measure what we call a model of cognitive steering. Now, let me explain a little bit what I mean by cognitive steering. So there is a cognitive network involved in simulating and selecting possible self-actions, and it's centered around the hippocampus. And we know from wide studies over the last 20 years that the hippocampus is involved not just in memory, but also in simulating possible future actions. The imagination, which is the kind of the way we experience the hippocampus on a day-to-day basis, enabling us to imagine ourselves performing different operations. It appears the imagination provides a kind of decoupled mental environment in which we can experiment with actions and choices and thoughts and simulate playing them out before we select them or choose not to. So if you like, the evidence is now well established that the imagination enables the mind to project forward self-operation prior to then enacting it. And it serves as a kind of route map directing our future actions. And that's where the language of steering, of cognitive steering comes in, that we're enabling ourselves to steer our route forward down the road ahead. And so it provides a kind of self-regulatory decision-making mechanism relating to attentional focus and executive control. And we posited that the ability to cognitively steer in an effective and healthy way would serve as a precursor to healthy and therefore unhealthy socially and mentally mental health behaviors. So if we could measure patterns of cognitive steering, we could explore whether they correlated with mental health or mental ill health. So just to frame this a little bit more schematically, traditional well-being tracking instruments on the left-hand side will ask a subject to review their propensity for mentally unhealthy behaviors, thoughts and feelings. The problem with that is that it sensitizes those individuals, those respondents, to those negative mental health thoughts and actions, therefore making the problem worse. The instrument that we developed, that we gave the name Steer Tracking to, primes a subject with imagined neutral cues and then triggers an imagined response, which we're then able to calibrate that response and then correlate that response to any known mental health risks or concerns, and evidence whether what we're measuring is valid. And by doing so, we're avoiding sensitizing the subject to negative thoughts and actions. Let me move this into the concrete. So the instrument involves the students as an online instrument. They'll sit at a screen, they'll put headphones on, and they're led through a visualization, an audio visualization. I put the script of the visualization on the screen for you, so you can read it for yourself. And you can imagine, as a student, you'll be sitting there in silence and listening to this being spoken to you nice and slowly and calmly. I'll just give you 30 seconds just to have a look at it. So you can see that the students in their minds are constructing what we call a visual space, which is neutral and non-triggering, and that space then becomes a vehicle to explore how they're going to respond to certain prompts or cues. We actually have 16 cues that we then introduce to the students sequentially, which they respond to. So I've given you some examples of the cues here. Here's the first one up at the top there. Is your space different to what is outside your space? Again, just notice that that's a very neutral cue. It's not asking them anything direct about their mental well-being. Is your space different to what is outside your space? So it's referring to that mental space that they've imagined in their mind. And the response options are on a Likert scale from definitely not through to definitely. Let me read a second question. Something changes outside your space. Does your space change too? Someone in your space asks you to do something. Will you do it? You need something in your space. Do you want other people to help you get it? Someone comes into your space. Will you let them see what you are thinking? Imagine you can choose to keep a part of your space private. How much would you keep private? How often do you like things to change in your space? Do you like trying things you haven't done before in your space? That's a sample of 16 cues that we introduce. And as you can see, each of those cues is directed at the the space as a target. And so we're deploying this neutral space that they've imagined in their mind, which we're not specifying what that space can be, so young people can construct any kind of imagined space they want, and we make it clear to them in the introduction that the space they might create can be a real place that they can remember going to. It can be an imagined place that they've made up. It can be a composite. It can be outside. It can be inside. And students and young people come up with all kinds of different imagined spaces in their minds when we ask them about it. But we don't need to ask them about the nature of their actual space, the picture they've got in their head. All we need to do is to get them to do that imagination exercise and then ask them these series of prompts. And the interesting thing is that it's a very easy exercise for young people to respond to. They find it accessible and quite playful. They quite enjoy it. They quite like things like mindfulness and things like that these days. And we've also found that children on the autistic spectrum are quite able to do this exercise as well. There's a factor structure that we've been able to demonstrate here that relates to 4 different factors that we're measuring through the 16 cues, what we call on the right-hand side here, trust of self, trust of others, self-disclosure, and seeking change. So those are the 4 factors we're measuring through the responses of the 16 cues. Now, the way that we validated the instrument was to model test it against other known mental health and wellbeing risks that we knew about the students. So in the study we performed with about 2,500 young people, we had previously asked them, these 3 questions, have you been bullied in the past year in the context of school? Second question, have you self-harmed or thought about self-harming in the past year? Thirdly, how able are you to manage the pressure of work at school? So the students had answered those questions, and then they completed the steer tracking assessment, and then we used a support vector machine model to test the fit of the item responses and the factor combinations with their welfare and well-being responses that they're given to these 3 questions here. And what we were able to demonstrate was a high degree of accuracy that the model fitted the instances of bullying, self-harm, and school pressure, around about kind of an 80 to 83% accuracy rate on both classes. So students who, for example, were bullied, who said that they had been bullied, as well as students who said they hadn't been bullied. So there was an accuracy of an equivalent level on both those class responses there. And interestingly, different patterns of the 16 responses and the factor scores correlated with each of the different well-being questions. So it wasn't simply a red flag. There were particular patterns which were associated with bullying, different patterns associated with self-harm, different patterns associated with not coping with school pressure. So the steer tracking assessment is a valid instrument that, by measuring these cognitive precursors, can help us to understand and anticipate students who are at higher well-being risk without asking them direct well-being questions. And that's the crucial thing. We don't have to ask them direct questions. We can simply ask them questions about their space, and the results can tell us which students are facing certain specific well-being risks. And that's hugely useful if we can get that information in a school. It helps us to identify young people who are at risk earlier without triggering a well-being risk by asking them a direct well-being question. So I just want to look briefly before I end at the contextual value for schools who use this instrument. And I should say that this instrument has been in use now for a number of years in schools, been used by a number of schools for many years, and it's used 3 times a year. Students will complete the assessment online on 3 occasions in each of the 3 terms. It takes about 10 minutes for them to do so. And what we were able to show in a 2024 control study, and this was a study performed by an independent evaluator, it was independently funded, Steer didn't fund it here, so we weren't marking our own work. This was marked by and funded by a different organisation entirely, and involved 19 UK schools, secondary schools, students age 11 to 18. So there were 19 schools involved in the study. And the study showed that schools that were using the STEER tracking assessment, the teachers had greater confidence because of the data that they were able to get from the instrument in being able to support and address mental health concerns in the school. Secondly, teachers had greater agency in knowing how to address those mental health concerns. And this was related to the fact that the data from the STEER tracking assessment doesn't just tell them, you've got a number of students who are facing, thinking about self-harming, or are being bullied, or are developing eating disorders, but instead it tells them about those patterns of those 4 factors: how they're developing trust of self, their trust of others, how they're seeking change, and how they're self-disclosing. And then the teachers were able, the third point, to give those students practical activities and opportunities in the context of school to train them to improve those patterns of self-regulation, their cognitive steering. So, for example, if a student was developing a pattern of low self-disclosure, a teacher could give that student specific and targeted low-level opportunities to improve their self-disclosure, to give them chances to share in small groups, or form a buddy relationship in a safe context, or a particular tutor would just ask them a question every morning at a tutor time, just to sort of make sure that they were okay. And so the data could inform the practical actions of the tutors and the teachers in schools on a day-to-day basis to actually support the young people. Teachers are really positive about it. Some really interesting case studies about how they felt empowered. Here, I'm short on time, so I'm going to move on quite quickly, but you can follow those case studies yourself. And I want to be able to move on, but sorry, I seem to have just lost my PowerPoint. Go back. And there was also some really encouraging data suggesting that this improved student mental health outcomes themselves. So it didn't just improve the teacher's ability and agency to support, it actually objectively improved the mental health outcomes for young people as well. So those schools who were using STEER in comparison with the control group saw the number of reported mental health instances reduce as a result of using STEER. And they also saw school attendance improve. In the UK, school attendance is related to mental well-being. There are students who don't attend because they don't feel safe in school, and by receiving this kind of support from their teachers through the STEER data, those schools actually saw attendance increase as well in those young people who were receiving that support. I've rushed through there because I'm conscious that we're short on time. I'm sure the presentation will be shared with you, and the links to be able to follow up on the study itself, read the paper, and the associated citations will be there. I put my email on here, and please feel free to reach out to me, simon@steer.global. simon@steer.global is my email address if you'd like to follow up on anything that I've covered in today's talk. Thank you.